We are live at KubeCon North America, Chicago 2023. This is DevOps Dispatch. My name is Laura Santamaria, and I am a lead developer advocate at Dell. For the 0.5 people actually paying attention. And my co-host is here.
Hi, I'm Kat Cosgrove, and I am also a lead developer advocate here at Dell for the co-workers standing in the booth.
Excellent, excellent. And we have a lovely guest with us today.
Hi, thank you for calling me lovely. But my name is Natali Vlatko.
There you go.
And I'm an open source architect for Cisco, specifically in their open source program office.
Very nice, very nice. There's a lot of open source in there. I think that's going to be part of our conversation, isn't it?
I mean, very likely. Very likely. I do like open source a lot. I also love being ogled outside the booth by random people,
It's
which
perfect.
is taking place right now.
That's actually a very good friend of mine who is deciding that he's going to photobomb us every chance he gets.
Every time he walks past this booth and one of us is in it, he's pressing his face up against the glass.
Excellent.
He thinks it tickles him pink. He thinks it's very funny.
You know.
He thinks it's funny and charming. We think probably differently.
Yeah.
I just think it's entertaining.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because I'm also very, very silly. So that's how it works. But on that note, not on that note, on a different note, I guess. Sure. We would like to talk about community today and open source. And I hear that there was some discussions about psychological safety.
Oh,
we
yeah.
were going to talk about and everything. How do we want to set the scene?
Well, I mean, firstly, I just want to feel like, the great vibes in the room after the community awards that were just announced here at KubeCon.
There we go.
That felt really good to kind of, recognize a lot of the top contributors. I want to shout out to my girl, Divya Mohan, top documentarian, my co-chair for the Special Interest Group in Documentation for Kubernetes. Those kinds of awards and that kind of recognition doesn't come from just like a smooth sailing journey in terms of community work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we talk about having psychological safety in a lot of the work that we do in community, it's usually around when there are issues and challenges that we need to face and how do we solve for those things. And sometimes people aren't feeling great about speaking up and maybe saying something that could be interpreted in a way that's like a dig or just general criticism to a possible open source coworker that they don't mean in that way, but there's an issue and we want to solve it, and they want to get to the the outcome of everyone's working and collaborating in a safe space.
Yeah, it can be difficult to figure out how to break down an issue that was absolutely a result of a person without making them feel bad.
Totally.
We do have to talk about it. We do have to sit here and figure out what went wrong and how do we prevent that in the future, and that will require acknowledging that there was a screw up, right?
Exactly. And especially, I mean, it's easier when there's malintent, but that's very rarely the case in those.
Almost never, yeah.
Exactly. And so how do you talk about that in a productive way where it doesn't feel like an attack or it doesn't make someone feel not great? It's hard. And I think I do want to shout out to yourself, Kat, actually, for dealing with some of that in the last Kubernetes release, specifically with the retro that we held in SIG release. And I think that was handled in a way where, docs didn't go well last release in the way that we would have liked. Kat, props to you for coming in and saving the day and stepping in there. And then us being able to talk about, hey, as a community, how do we solve for us humans? We have lives outside of open source and things can happen, things can drop off, and the work that we're doing in that specific moment maybe is no longer a priority. And how does someone come in, step in, take over and ensure that a release can still happen, docs can still get published? And I think that was something that I think we handled okay. But I'm also biased.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that we'll know that we handled it the right way until we are faced with that situation again and handle it differently.
Yeah.
But yeah, how do we make somebody feel safe enough to step back from an open source role proactively before something becomes in their real life becomes an issue enough that it impacts them?
Yeah.
Right?
Or how do we also help people feel safe enough to kind of speak up when they think that work isn't trending in the way that it needs to be, and we're going to actually be late with a release, or these docs aren't getting published on time, or my shadows haven't done the work that's needed. How can you feel safe to also speak up about those things and claim that we're in a yellow or red status right now in terms of our deliverables? That's something that that's also really hard.
It is. And it's in my case, it was how do I speak up and say, hey, my lead has dropped a ball. How do we move forward and fix this?
Yeah,
because I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think also it's as the SIG lead that really appreciated that you stepping in, Kat. I think that was something where the bias to action of wanting to actually like fix the problem mattered more than you knowing what you needed to do. And I think that was something that we have a lot of documentation outlining what needs to happen.
Yep.
A lot of people ready to put their hands and their time and their fingers on keyboards, kind of thing, to make sure that release still happened on time. But just like someone willing to kind of step in and fill that gap, that was like the important thing. And I think that's something in community in general, and going back to the awards today, that is clearly like recognition clearly does happen for those kinds of things. And also shout out to Kat again for getting an award for her great work in the last release too, and the Contributor Summit. Yeah.
Surprise. I mean, as somebody who I run a bunch of different conference or help organize various different things. And so I often have leads who they're really excited. They want to help. And then something happens. And part of it is also being proactive as the lead and saying like, hey, are you doing okay? Do you need help? And if they say no, and I know better, it's kind of a, no, really. Do you need help?
Yeah.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I will help you.
Yeah.
And I won't tell anybody that you need any help, and it's fine.
That's a great point too, because I think it's really easy to say, oh, your status update is green, so I don't have to pay attention to you. Everything is fine.
Exactly.
Trust but verify.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly right. And I think that's, and there's a way to do that where it doesn't feel like micromanaging and overreaching as well.
Yeah.
Right. But also as, let's say, the release lead for that cycle, like part of that is your job. But also part of it is, again, there's that trust, but there's also, hey, hopefully other steps that you can kind of look into that maybe shows that the puzzle isn't complete. Status is green, but they're not turning up to any meetings. Something is
something's different
there.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Status is green, but branch syncs aren't happening.
Right, exactly, and it's clearly documented that they should be, and like there's
a paper trail for those because there's a PR.
Right, exactly. And so I think also us in SIG Docs and the Kubernetes project specifically, we do a lot of trusting, and probably for the last couple of releases have had to do also a bit more verifying because we've had things not go completely great. Exactly, but at the same time, it hasn't meant that we say, oh, we now need to like change the way the whole process runs. No, we need to like make sure that we can advocate for more feedback bubbling up and recording that so that we can solve these problems for the future. And I think that's something that we felt really heard in the SIG, by the release team bubbling that feedback up so that we can improve it for next time. And we were able to put that docs checklist together so that some of that safety can be there in terms of, hey, we need to, say that this status is like yellow or red this time, which means, we're behind on X deliverables. And I think we always want to say, hey, that's okay if you're behind because we're around to help. We're going to be here and help you out. Us in docs, the release team, and so on. And I think we, on our side, can also do our part by over communicating that option.
Makes sense. I know. Go ahead.
I've been over communicating with my shadows this cycle because of out of fear.
Oh yeah.
This is a fear driven release for me.
Making sure it happens, making sure it gets done. Let's go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think a thing that we could do better is set an expectation with all sub-team leads that it is not normal to be green for the whole cycle.
Right.
That would be good.
It's not normal.
That would be helpful.
It's good for you to occasionally be yellow or red. Like we have that system for a reason.
Yeah.
Like having reporting green all the way through a cycle does not make it look like you're doing a better job. It doesn't mean that you're like a more reliable contributor. It doesn't mean that you're more likely to get selected to lead the next cycle. It's not good to be green the whole time. That's weird.
And it actually doesn't present any learning opportunities for you. I think in the sense that, it is very cliche to say the idea that like you learn from failure. And it's not necessarily a failure if you report 1 week yellow, but it's showing you that, oh, is this something like, do I have these kind of skills and this ability to troubleshoot and help out? Like, it's kind of like an interesting way to kind of prove that your capabilities are like up to the task, and I think not to say that people should like purposely try and find a yellow or red status to report,
but you shouldn't be weird about it.
Exactly. And no one is sitting there expecting it to be green the whole time. In fact, quite the opposite. And like you just mentioned, if it's green every time, that probably is also a signal to myself as lead going, are we sure? I should just double check.
Yeah,
for sure.
I kind of wonder sometimes if we should get rid of the green, yellow, red, though. because I think that it's the color has a
Connotation,
subconscious connotation that, oh, I did something wrong.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so like, I don't even know what you would do that would still make it accessible. Cause like part of it is the red, yellow, green is fairly accessible for most people, but it also is, I think, a fairly US thing in terms of like stoplights, right? Is it,
Yeah.
or is it not? Like, is that pretty universal to most people?
I think so. I'm trying to think of a country I've been to that doesn't have red, yellow, green
Traffic
stoplights.
lights.
Japan does.
But I think what the interesting
UK
part,
does.
yeah, I think the interesting part that you mentioned is like the fact that if something is red, the connotation to communicate or admit or show that,
Right.
like that's a
Yeah.
cultural difference for sure.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's something that, you know, we're a global project in Kubernetes that we need to make sure that we're being accessible for a lot of the different communication modes that like take place. And I think, again, the over communication of it's okay, but also being able to kind of, it's something that I spoke about with my leads a while ago, but do we need to kind of show as an example someone willing to maybe drop the ball to show this is how you would
Yeah.
communicate
Right.
and this is how we would troubleshoot it as a community, get together and be blameless about it.
Right.
I think that's something that that's kind of hard to put together as like in a fake way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it could be really beneficial for a lot of our contributors in countries outside of North America and Europe to show that actually this isn't something that you'd be chastised for
Right.
or like or you know flayed for or whatever. It's actually something that shows how the community gets together and supports one another.
Yeah, I'm not going to be the person to intentionally fail in a
Great.
release as an example, so that people can see that. But you know, maybe we should, in positions of leadership, be a little bit more willing to over communicate when we screw up.
Yeah, I love that idea. I think that's something that we are not always willing to do on the leadership side because, again, that pressure of we're the people who are leading the community and we have to be the best example because those issues that have happened where community leaders have been not so great examples have been so hurtful to the community as well.
Exactly.
And there's really only one extreme or the other. I feel like there's very little in between on the community side that doesn't help mean that you don't play with fire with those kinds of situations.
I mean, we could do like an awkward role play video that everybody has to watch, like as training.
Like
We could do
the
that.
airplane safety videos.
Yeah, well, sort of, except like, oh no, we have a yellow. What do we do? What does this mean? Oh no. But it would just be really funny. I'm more thinking like the typical HR videos that you have to watch every year.
Yeah.
They get really, really awkward sometimes.
They're really embarrassing.
Yeah.
So it's
So do that for.
Yeah, so instead of promoting psychological safety, we're promoting psychological awkwardness.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, hey, maybe it would work.
Everybody's
I don't
just
think
going to
it's
have to be
actually
weird
would.
about it.
Yeah. I mean, if everyone's weird, it could actually be really helpful. It could work.
Right, exactly. Because I think it would just be a little strange, but also at the same time, it's a way to give that actual example
Yeah.
with an easy way to show it. Whereas instead of trying to have one person who's in the know fail by accident,
Right.
they might not. They might not have the acting skills, I guess, to be able to do that well.
Well, I think
I don't
like one way that we could kind of like try and like push some of that happening in a more organic way. Like the retros are a great example of where you actually have to like sit there and say, okay, what went great, blah, blah, blah. Everyone pats themselves on the back and the team, but what didn't go so great? And like actually having people purposely say, okay, I am going to focus on the not so great things, but also focus on how do we actually rectify those? How do we find solutions for them within the community with community help and like having that emphasis.
Yeah.
And I think, you never want a retro that is only full of what went wrong. You do need to do like the kind of, the feel good sandwich on either side and so on. But having that bias to action of wanting to, look at those problems that need, community help and support, and being like open to talking about them and asking the rest of the community, folks who maybe won't speak up on their own. Hey, do you agree? Did you see these kinds of same issues? We want to hear from you.
Right.
This is us just asking questions, nothing to do with you as a person or your contribution.
Right, exactly. That makes sense.
Yeah. I think like in special interest groups where, especially in docs where we get a lot of new contributors and first time to either Kubernetes or open source, we deal with a lot of folks who are scared to ask questions or or are very good at asking questions because they don't read the documentation, for example.
Right.
And
Right.
They're always the two extremes, right? And I think we have to just still be okay with answering and directing in a way that is still kind of helpful, because we want to actually showing that kind of side of answering those folks' questions actually helps the psychological safety aspect
Yes,
of
it does.
other questions come up from people who wouldn't normally ask. And I think that's something that as a lead of docs, I've had to really get my head around. Like, I do have to answer the same questions over and over, because in like 3 releases time, someone will get the courage that they never had before to ask a question of me because they see me answering all this stuff, for example. That's something that is sometimes hard to swallow, because it's a lot of please read the
documentation that we put all this effort into writing so that you wouldn't have to ask these questions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're asking questions that elaborate on these docs. That's great. I want those questions.
Sure.
Yes, hell yeah. On a public meeting in a public channel as well. No DMs.
Right.
Please. Like, let's make sure that, everyone is benefiting from the answers and questions that are taking place. Yeah. But yeah, questions. It's just why?
Well, see, I actually like answering those questions, because the way that I do it is always instead of, can you please read the documentation? It's always here's the answer. And if you forget what my answer was, here's the documentation where it was located.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, because it reminds people that there's documentation, but it also validates that they can ask questions.
Great.
So I don't know, maybe it works. Maybe that's just from teaching kids and, dealing with incessant 8-year-old questions of why. Why did that blow up?
Yeah.
Why did that work?
Yeah.
Blow up volcanoes. It was fun.
We also try and use, for those who don't know, Kubernetes has a Slack community, and we do a lot of the communication on there. And we try and use like as many features like of the native Slack app as possible, like pinned messages and bookmarks and things like this, as further ways to do a lot of that communication, so that even that async work of answering everyone's questions is like the link to the pinned message, and like, and here it is for future, and etc. I actually have like a notes app where I just keep like the canned responses that I often have to give.
There you go.
And I just add
good.
in like the person's name instead, and like maybe it's a good morning or good evening or whatever it is in their time zone, and just like, so there is a little bit of personalized part there, but it's also, I have answered this question 50 million times. This is the response.
Gives you a little more spoons to be able to handle everything else too.
I mean, it does. I'm the kind of person that doesn't find the Slack communication work like that much of a burden. I don't mind actually doing it that much. So I have like obviously strategies to deal with a lot of that stuff, but I know that for some folks it's just it can be a bit overwhelming. So I'm happy to pick up the Slack. I'm practicing for our talk later.
Oh God.
But yeah, I know that that's also going to be something that, again, as a community, how much of a deterrent would it be in like a public channel that people keep asking the same thing? They're not even reading the messages back from like a day ago. They're asking the same thing and their responses are the same. Also, some of that also kind of needs to not be so loud.
Maybe not. I don't know. Like, I think we have been trying to move around the channels a little bit to try to, because I know we split out the org members versus the contributors versus the users, because there was a lot of user questions in the general chat. And then it was like, okay, well, what about if you were trying to do contributions? That would be a little bit different. But.
Yeah. And then there's like SIG sub-project channels too. Like there's SIG Docs and there's SIG Docs blog.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is something that, a lot of folks came in. Actually, someone came in the other day into SIG Docs going, I have a blog idea.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, that's not going to be always obvious that I should ask blog questions in the blog channel.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't start with the word blog, for example.
Right.
Or something.
Well, also, if you've been part of the project for a while, you don't know that there's been more channels. You just have it already in your channel list. So you just click it.
Yeah.
And you're like,
that's true.
I know this is the right place to go. Click.
Yeah.
And then you find out, oh, you started a new channel for that. Okay, I will move there. Sorry.
Yeah.
And that's another aspect of the psychological safety part where, you have to let people ask questions or do things that are outside of your scope of how things should work in order for those questions to come in and for people people to feel comfortable. Oh, don't ask me questions about the blog in the non-blog channel. I mean,
you could say that, but it would be mean, and
Exactly.
also it's literally just more time consuming than answering the question.
Exactly. And it's very easy to copy and paste the message and say, hey, I'm just moving you to this appropriate channel. Let's keep talking here, et cetera, et cetera. And I know, again, the Slack work, people like to kind of be in the channels that they only want to pay attention to and really like coordinate work in a certain way. I can talk wherever, be wherever. So I'm the one that's like flexible, and I'm happy to work to other people's specifications.
Makes sense. So we are just about at time, but I heard you mention a talk. So you can get a chance to plug the recording of the talk, because we won't have this live in time to talk about your live one. But the recording, plug it. Let's hear it.
Yeah, so I'm actually doing 2 talks. But the first one that everyone should definitely go and check out is called Dungeons and Deployments, Leveling Up in Kubernetes.
Oh, boy.
Kat and I will be sharing the stage with 2 good friends of ours, Seth and Noah. And Noah has done an amazing job at horrible jokes that we'll be telling.
Absolutely the best and worst of Dungeons and Dragons.
Let's hear it. It'll be fun.
It'll be great. And it's going to be something where there's going to be a lot of like movement involved. So sorry in advance to folks watching on the watching the stream after, where like Kat and I may regularly like walk out of frame.
Yeah. Just throw our character sheets in the air and leave.
Yeah, definitely a lot of that happening. In fact, I don't think I'll have a character sheet for half of my session.
Yeah, no, I might just eat mine.
Right. I love that. Yeah, I love that Bjork style.
Yeah.
And then the other talk I'll be doing is with my award-winning co-chair Divya. That'll be on Thursday. That's tomorrow, or later for virtual folks watching. And that's going to be a call out for folks wanting to help out SIG docs where we need help, and we're highlighting, spoiler alert, Netlify. If you know, if you are a JavaScript developer, I want to talk to you, as in a better one than me. I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about Hugo, and you're going to learn a bit of Go, and you're going to sit down and work with us with our website. We need so much help. But yeah, just us kind of highlighting where we need help with like issue wrangling, with Netlify and Hugo debugging, and generally just like better documentation work. So check it out.
All right. Well, excellent. So my name is Laura.
My name is Kat.
And I've been Natali Vlatko.
And this was DevOps Dispatch Live here at KubeCon North America, Chicago 2023. I think I got all of that in there once. Everybody say bye.
Bye.